Yep.
This has to do with the Dean Martin show, and one of the most memorable, as far as I'm concerned. And it has to do with Jimmy Stewart and Raquel Welch that happened to be guests on the show this particular week. Raquel Welch came in first, her call being like at 9 o'clock, and her first words out of her mouth were, "Where's my makeup man? I've got to have a mirror with light globes all the way around it to help with my makeup and all that." And Bob Sidney, who was the choreographer, says, "What are you?" She said, "No." He couldn't believe what he was hearing. And she went on and raved, and he just let her go. And finally he said to her, "My dear," he said, "there's somebody else on this show besides you." And she says, "Oh yeah, who?" He says, "Jimmy Stewart, that's who." There's a brief minute silence there. And Raquel says, "Who's he?" Bob Sidney lost it. He says, "Who's he? He just happens to be the biggest movie star in the business. Who's he? Are you serious, my dear?" And he raves and rants, and she just sits there and has this blank look on her face. "Who's he? Oh!" So finally, after we set her routine up, Jimmy Stewart's call comes in, or he answers, comes in for at his prescribed time. And the first words out of Bob Sidney's mouth were, "Jim, I don't know what we're going to do with you." He said, "You can't sing and you can't dance." And Jimmy Stewart looks at him and he says, "Well," he says, "I can play piano and sing Ragtime Cowboy Joe if that's any help to you." And Bob Sidney goes, "Oh, wonderful, wonderful." And in that short period of time, that just like a split second, he had come up with this whole routine in his head. And so this is really what all that Jimmy Stewart had to do, was always sings raggedy music to the cattle as he swings back and forward in a saddle on a horse, a pretty good horse. That was it. Then the dancers would all pile in on him and do the fancy routines, and then he'd nod to him and he'd go, "He always sings raggedy music to the cattle as he swings back and forward in his saddle on a horse, a pretty good horse." Then they'd do it again. So the last routine was this number. So we're putting it on its feet, or what they call blocking day. And Sidney comes over to me and he says, "We are in trouble." Just like that. I said, "What's wrong?" He says, "Well, Greg Garrison doesn't want to pay the royalties for the can on that number. And if we can't use the can, he says, the whole routine is ruined." He says, "That's the biggest part of the number right there." Oh, and he cries and carries on. I said, "Bob, relax. We'll do this with it." So that week I made the royalties, and he said, "Oh, you're so smart." And we only had to change 2 parts on the orchestration, which didn't take very long because we just, I sketched it out and the way they went with it. And that week, I made the royalties.
Okay.